Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest, a friend of Sean McCann. His name is James Cordiner. Last name is spelled Cordiner. And he operates, if you're watching this on YouTube, X, or Rockfin, the Voluntaryist Academy. So you'll see that website and the symbol, the V and the A. And so we're going to just kind of talk about this kind of concept. I was doing some research about it myself and kind of trying to understand its principles, but he can explain that in greater detail. And James and I were on a show, Black Pill Digest, that he had with Sean. I think we were talking the pre-show. They went through 8 episodes, so you can check that out. I think I was the first episode, if I remember correctly. But again, we're going to talk about this voluntarist ideal with James Cordiner. So James, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. Shout out to Sean right off the bat. He set us up. So thank you, Sean. And, really, William, thank you so much.
Appreciate my pleasure. It's great to have you. So for people who may not have heard our other shows or seen your work, I think you're on the One Great Work website too, with some other names that I thought, like Richard Grove, I think kind of is a name that comes to mind in this kind of space. Maybe you can talk about your background, how you got interested in these ideas for people, and maybe just do a simple description or definition of what is voluntarism.
All right. Yeah, not a problem. Yeah. The One Great Work Network is a place where I hang my hat for sure. There's many people, James Corbett, Richard Grove. It's Mark Passio's like big time project that he's worked on for years to get it together and find the suitable means to actually produce it and make sure that there is a home for everybody that's talking about the principles of natural law and the ideals of liberty, and really trying to make sure that there's a home for people like that to carry on the torch, make it easy to find everyone that is speaking out about natural law and the topics surrounding it. So very grateful for that. And a lot of brilliant people on there. Sean and I are on there. Like you mentioned, Richard Grove, of course, he's on there. James Corbett, and then, Will Keller, Brandon Martin, Logan Hart. I could go on and on and on. There's like 72 people that Mark has found throughout the years to bring in and onboard onto that network. And it's going great. It's running strong.
I've had Etienne de la Boetie on,
yes,
or Howard. So
yeah, he's on there too. How could I forget?
He's kind of interested in this kind of subject as well, right?
Yeah. Howard Etienne de la Boetie squared. He's a good friend of mine. Okay. I enjoy his company a lot, and he's there. Mm-hmm.
Super smart, super sharp guy.
Oh yeah.
So you're at One Great Work, and then how did you kind of get into getting started with this Voluntarist Academy?
Throughout my life, I've just been like a lot of other people, exposed to things that I didn't want to go and do. And coming out of my adolescent stage, I realized that there was something more to it than just being a young kid that wants to fight back and go against the grain with certain things. And I went through public education system, and from a very early age, I realized that there was something not right about it. And I ended up being somebody that they diagnosed with ADHD. They put me on medication, things that I didn't want to do. And I always felt like something deep inside was telling me that it was wrong, that there was nothing wrong with me, and that there was something wrong with the box they were trying to fit me in. And that was like from a very young age. I mean, 6-7 years old, and having these prolific thoughts, like for a 6 or 7 year old to be having thoughts of that nature is something that I don't know. Having 2 kids myself and being around a lot of other kids growing up, I didn't see a lot of them having those types of thoughts and fighting back at that age. So, but to move on, when I was a teenager, I was into skateboarding, all this stuff, and punk rock music and all this stuff. So like I've been going against the grain for quite a while. I just fell into this pit of despair where I felt like I was all alone for a long time. And just name drop him again. Sean McCann and I have been friends since like 2003. Gotcha. And so when he was coming up, and he was discovering a lot of these things. And him and my sister, when they dated, so that's how I met him, right? And so that was back in like '03, and so I was at my sister's hip. She and I were like best friends back then, and I'd always be with her, and then they'd be hanging out. And Sean was like really cool to me, so he brought me along, and he and her. My sister's an artist, and she's just an amazing person. And so story goes that like I started asking questions. Like I remember one time we were in the van, we were going camping, and this was back in like 2004. And we that song Mr. Crowley comes on, the Ozzy Osbourne song, and I'm like asking questions about the lyrics, and like Sean was back there in the back seat telling me, certain things about what the lyrics meant, and it was a fun time, and we'd always exchange ideas about music and everything. But to push forward, um, let's just fast forward right to like what made me go and say I got to start a podcast, I got to do this, I got to like form a base of operations, right? 2019, I was just kind of like trying to find a new hobby, and I've always been into the spirituality aspects and like the consciousness and the individuality and all that great stuff. I've always been into that and tried to find a way to explain it to people. And I thought, why don't I just bring it to the internet and see if I can get my thoughts out in the form of a podcast? So that happened in 2019. And then, of course, the world fell apart with this COVID-19 pandemic. And that was in I started in like November of 2019 trying to put a podcast together. Then everyone got scared, and I was among those people. At first I was like, oh man, I don't know what to think about this. Like, holy crap, like maybe we should just pump the brakes. And that was me. That was the type of reaction I had to everything happening in early 2020. And then throughout 2020, I was just like picking up on things that didn't make sense. And the podcast was kind of on the back burner. But then later on in the year, I started picking that back up, and it was something that I fell in love with doing. It used to be called A Hitchhiker's Guide to Truth. And, but in 2021, when the jabs were being rolled out, I was very outspoken about that, because what had happened was I've always had a really big problem with big pharma because of the medication that I was put on when I was like 9, on amphetamines. And I really dedicated a lot of time in my life to understanding what those drugs do to children. And I started trying to find an understanding of that when I was in my teenage years, because that's when I really was just troubled, and I wanted answers, and I wanted to find out what the heck happened to me. And so I started looking into it, and it took me a long time because I had other interests and everything, but I always in my heart wanted to know what the heck that stuff was all about. And I knew it was wrong. Something about big pharma just seemed off. I don't mind. I'm not saying that that like some sort of medicine shouldn't exist. I'm not saying that no one needs it. I'm not saying that disorders don't exist. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just simply saying that I believe, and I think, I don't believe it. I think that the masses amounts of diagnosed children, they're just diagnosed to make them shut up and sit down. To sit them down in the schools and fit them in a box that they otherwise don't need to be fit in. I've had a vendetta against the public school system since I found out that it was the teachers that convinced my mom to give consent on my behalf to the doctors to put me on the medication. And ever since I found that out, I've been like, I've had a really big middle finger up toward the public education system in this country. And that energy turned into me trying to figure out where the heck did they get that power? And then from there, I've just kind of really tried to break out on my own and try to figure out if I could share that with the world. So this past year, what I've done is I've reformulated my podcast. I've kind of broke it up, put it back together, and now it's called Voluntaryist Academy. And it's very fresh, and there's not really a lot of content on the YouTube page or channel rather at the moment, but I've got some things in store. So why voluntarism? Like what is voluntarism? I can read it right from the homepage of my website. I've got it pulled up here, and it's also on our screen here for the people watching. Voluntaryism is the social philosophy that all forms of human association should be voluntary and based on the non-aggression principle. We can call that the NAP. I'll call it the NAP. Okay. The non-aggression principle that posits that any initiation of violence on peaceful people is illegitimate no matter what the outcome, but this allows for the use of force in self-defense or to protect property. In other words, the proposition that interactions in which both parties consent are universally preferable to interactions in which one party coerces the other. And voluntarism is the moral position which maintains that no peaceful person can justly be submitted to the control of others in the absence of his or her own consent. And so back to the stream of thought when it comes to the big pharma and my need to kind of break down what I'm really trying to say and what sparked my interest in making sure that the world has one more person in it talking about this.
Right.
They can create as much medicine as they want. They can do that. Go right ahead. We can have problems with taxation. We can go down that rabbit hole. We can have problems with whatever, but my major focus is go ahead, create it. Don't try to force me to take it.
Right.
Don't
That's a
come out
huge
and
issue
say
because that's
that-
exactly what happened over
Yeah.
COVID.
And that's what
Mandates,
made me
force.
go, oh my God, this is really messed up. I don't know if the sickness is real. I don't know if the jabs will work, but I know that they're not allowed to make me take this stuff. I know that is not acceptable. So I have to do something about it. What can I do? I can obviously fight back as much as I can. We were told that maybe we would be forced to get it to keep our jobs. I told the owner of the company that I work for straight up, if you try to do that to me, you will have one less employee. I will walk away immediately. My children, I told my wife and I, we did not allow anyone to convince us that our children needed it and that we needed it. So that's how I feel about that. And that was the major driver behind me learning about anarchism and taking it more seriously and learning more about voluntarism because of how important it is to understand that I own myself. This body is my own. It's really some of the only property that I have been granted by the universe itself. I was born with it and no one else can own it. I'm no one's slave. And everything that I just said about my own body applies to you, William. You own yourself. All the viewers of this, you own yourself, period. You don't own anyone else. And no one else owns you. I'm not allowed to make you do stuff. And I would like it if you returned the courtesy, because if you choose not to return that courtesy, I will defend myself. And that's that. And I
Right.
promise.
So voluntarism isn't some kind of like lay down. It's just that a mutual agreement between parties to not cross boundaries or autonomies or things like that, or property as well. So it's your physical body, but also what you own as well. Is that
Well,
correct?
all of our rights stem from property rights. Every single right that we ever could have all stems from property rights. What you can and cannot, or what you do and do not rightfully possess or own. And the only way for you to rightfully possess or own something is for you to first have acquired it by not initiating harm in order to acquire that possession.
Right.
And I didn't initiate it. So the peaceful transaction of goods and property between people contracting voluntarily with one another, and that's how we gain property and exchange it. So when we're talking about how do we peacefully coexist, that's it. And we avoid doing things that are considered theft, and that's how we live peacefully. Every excuse that anyone's ever made for statism, those excuses revolve around fear of somebody else stealing the first person's property. And that's how I view it. And so, I mean, we can go forward here and kind of dive a little bit more into the non-aggression principle. I can really kind of sum it up, give you the gist of it really quickly. So the NAP, which the non-aggression principle, acronyms are cool. The NAP is an ethical and moral principle that asserts that aggression is inherently immoral and illegitimate. Aggression is defined as the initiation of physical force against persons or property, the threat of such, or fraud upon persons or their property. So, in contrast to pacifism, though, the NAP does not prohibit self defense. So, and then to wrap it up, the fact that governments and their hired mercenaries, which are the military and the police, they routinely violate the NAP, and that proves that they are immoral and their authority is illegitimate. So, the people that we rely on to allegedly keep us safe and to protect our rights on a daily basis, they violate our rights. They do that every single day. Every time you pay taxes, every time you register your car, every time you get an inspection sticker, whatever you call that little sticker that says that your car is safe. I know that there's different names for it all over the place, but every time those things happen to you, every time the interest rate on the Federal Reserve notes goes up, every time these covert taxes affect your lives, it's the government doing it and not your neighbor, not, it's so that's who's causing the chaos in the world at the moment.
Is the state? You think
Yeah.
it's the state, the American state? Well,
I
we're
think it's
taxed at
people's
what, fifty
compliance with the
percent
state.
rate? I think we're
What's that?
taxed at a 50% rate, something like that overall.
Mhm.
Like, so how can you get all that money? It's basically a form of enslavement. If you give all that money to the state and the state doesn't give you anything of that benefit back, so-called you're keeping you safe while they bomb other countries. So we're in a kind of place where the capital S state is actually kind of anti-human and toxic to human life. It's not the opposite way where it's serving us. We're served to them, to the big state. And I mean, if you even extrapolate, like some of these guys have gotten in because of fraud and ballot fraud and stuff like that. So it's even more malevolent. Like, these aren't even people you voted for. So
Yeah,
there's
there's a
got to be
bunch of
some other way.
unelected officials through what could be called the deep state, the shadow government, whatever. When we talk about CEOs or presidents of companies like Monsanto, for instance, when they're done being the CEO or president of that company, they get a cushy job being, I don't know, the head of the FDA, appointed by the president. So they're not elected. Fauci was never elected, but yet look what he was able to do. But look what he was able to convince everybody of. The people at Pfizer, they were never elected, yet they're able to go and fund all the media that propagandized people into oblivion. So yeah, I mean, I was just saying that, it's people are dying and they were tricked basically. And it's the same people that are convincing others that they are there to keep you safe and to protect your rights and liberties and everything that are allowing on the other side all of these like backroom handshake deals to basically just betray you and to kill you. We're on a one big plantation, as some people like to call it, and we're tax slaves. So with voluntarism, if we're able to kind of adopt this as a way to push forward, basically what we would be doing is we would be saying a big no thank you please to the government and saying we don't need you anymore. We are going to go around you and do things on our own and find a way to voluntarily live together instead of coercing each other and with threats of violence and all of this stuff in order to make others do things for us or on our behalf. We're going to respect others' property and we're going to voluntarily, live together. And
So
that,
if you were president, what would you, if you instituted these voluntarist ideas, what would be your kind of program?
It's a little bit of a weird question because I would have to first put myself in how would I ever be president? Because the thing is that The
Let me
thing
re-
is that
Go ahead. Let me
what brings
rephrase
up.
it. Let's say that you were creating an ideal society. You didn't run for any political office, but you wanted to institute these ideas across the population. How would you do it, and what would be your approach?
Well, the only way that I could ever really do anything is to first just be a power of example and to live according to the principles of natural law and show others firsthand just what kind of success can be lived by living according to those principles. And when they ask me, "Geez, you seem happy. Geez, you seem like you're having a very successful life. How'd you do it?" And I can tell them, and then hope to God and keep my fingers crossed that they would try to live a more voluntary life and try to not step on other people in order to climb some fake ladder that doesn't actually really exist other than as a kind of like a construct. It's not real. So I mean, what's real is our interactions with one another and how we affect, like how I affect my neighbor. That's real, not the corporate gigs and that stuff. Like that's not. I mean, yeah, you can go to the place, you can go to the building, you can have the job, but like that's not life. That's not reality. That's something made up to keep some economic wheel turning. It's so there's not really anything I could really do because I wouldn't be able to force anything upon anybody. Otherwise, I'd be violating the very principles that I am saying that I live by. So, in order to not be a hypocrite, I kind of just have to show people how far you can get by being a peaceful person. But then again, I'd have to also show people what happens when you try to come and steal from me, and then that's where some trouble can start. And the problem is that like when it comes to politics and stuff like that, um, you can't you can't really devote yourself to uh, like politics and everything and be a member of that class of people and remain faithful to these principles at the same time. You just can't do it.
So you're saying voluntarism is basically like an abnegation or a denial of the political structure. So there's really no authority in your world of pure voluntarism. There's no law enforcement or any kind of defense or anything like that.
Not necessarily, because we are allowed, according to the principles of natural law. If I'm walking down the street and a little old lady is getting harassed by a big burly guy, and it's obviously that that person is being taken advantage of, there's nothing stopping me from going over there and defending her on her behalf. It's clear as day what's going on in that situation, and somebody should put a stop to it. The problem with law enforcement is not the fact that they go around trying to keep people safe. The problem with law enforcement is that they swear an oath to enforce any law that is passed by the government, and that could include a law that is a clear violation of our human rights that are given to us by God, not by any constitution or political scribbles. So that's the problem with them. Now, if they could find a way to adhere to natural law and go around and help the defenseless and make sure that the community is actually safe, then that would be one thing. But they, for a paycheck, violate our natural rights on a daily basis, and that's a fact. And that's evil. If you're doing that sort of thing for money, that's evil. If you're doing that sort of thing just because, well, now you're a psychopath.
So voluntarism, like if you started enacting these principles of voluntarism and NAP or things like that, then the state, like in our current system,
Mhm,
the practical reality, its state is still there asking for taxes and
mhm.
money. So how do you see through your principles of natural law or voluntarism, is that a solution, or how do you get out? Because if you stop paying your taxes, like then you're going to jail in the United States. I don't recommend that at all.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to go to jail or prison in the United States for sure. It's like the world's largest penal colony, for sure. See, we still do have a lot of power as individuals, and if enough individuals that are, kind of, if we're all living if we're all living voluntarily, like as voluntarists with one another, like I've already stated, if we're defending each other when the time comes, when all that stuff is happening, there comes a point in the future where the scale will be tipped in our favor. See, I'm only one guy, so as an island, you can get consumed by the sea pretty quickly, right? But if take that metaphor and kind of just like, widen it. If I'm a huge landmass, me and millions of other people understanding these principles and how the government that exists right now is routinely violating our natural rights, and we say no, we're not going to take it anymore, and we won't comply. They can't arrest all of us. They can try, but eventually that's going to lead to something that no one wants to see, right? No one wants that. And on the other hand, if there's enough of us that understand this, and I live in New Hampshire in the Free State Project. I know this seems like but anyways, I live in New Hampshire. There's something called the Free State Project in New Hampshire. What their goal is to get enough of people that think like libertarians and that understand these principles. Their goal is to get enough of those people in public offices and in the state offices, so that way we can start in this state rolling back a lot of the just arbitrary laws that don't need to exist to make it more of a free society. When it comes down to defense of any sort of nation, because this won't happen all over the world, I don't suspect that it would, not in our lifetimes, but there's nothing wrong with having there's nothing wrong with having a large group of people all gathering around like a militia, like back in the day when we had Minutemen and anything like that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just when the job is done, you take off the uniform, you hang your hat, and you go home. There's no need for a standing army. You see, so when it comes to defense, like that's how you handle it. You don't get paid through taxation. You get paid because on your merits, and it shows that you deserve something for compensation, right? Lysander Spooner said that, and he was an anarchist from Boston back in the late 19th century, mid 19th century. He lived through the Civil War, and he wrote a lot about the things that he saw the federal government doing to the South during that time period. And he is a very big inspiration for many modern day anarchists and voluntarists and libertarians. So one of the things that he said in his essay on natural law was that what is the whole, and I'm going to paraphrase, he's basically saying, what is the point? What's the point of living? Well, the point of living is to live honestly and to give every man his due. And if you're living honestly and you're giving every man his due, well, you're not going to be treading on his natural rights, because that's what he's due. He's due a happy life free from harm. That's what every man is due. Every person is due that. And we don't have the right to go and stop that from happening. But when so that's the whole point here, is to try to adopt that. And I'm not trying to advocate for some kind of utopia or anything like that, because there's no such thing. Like it can never be achieved. That's like what communists talk about, and I'm no commie. I'm talking about embracing nature, the natural world, and reality for what it is. A fun, loving, chaotic, confused place that we can learn how to live with, instead of trying to control everything and have our fingers and on every puppet string possible. And so that brings us to, anarchism being the state of the condition of freedom. Okay. Anarchists are people who are trying to bring about a condition of absolute freedom. Because right now what we have is a condition of slavery. And anarchists are the opposite. They're the opposite of the ruling class, right? That's what we oppose, is a ruling class. And I say we as in us anarchists. So what do we do? How do we live? We have to adopt voluntarism, because voluntarism is the action, where anarchism is just a condition. It's not action. Yeah, you do certain things to bring it about, but what do? You do the voluntarist. That's what you do. This is how we attain, maintain, and retain a condition of freedom, a condition of anarchy. Because anarchy literally just means the etymology of the word "and" is the Greek prefix "an." An just means without, and archy comes from the Greek word archon, which means rulers, not a measurement stick. Okay, rulers as in the ruling class of people, and it doesn't mean no rules. It just means no rulers. These people are easily corrupted. Look at what we have now, for instance, all the lobbyists and everything in this country. That's just as an example. So that's a condition that I just described, a condition without rulers. And voluntarism is what we can all individually adopt, understand, and live by to get to a better place. And it won't happen overnight, because that could be honestly a little reckless. And I don't believe in exposing people to a situation that could get them harmed, because I honestly think that if we were to wake up tomorrow in an anarchic or whatever, however you would say that, in anarchy, if we were to wake up tomorrow in a state of that, then it could be really dicey out there, and that might be some Hollywood manipulation in my mind coming through, but I don't know. I just think that a lot of people aren't ready to dial 911 and have no one pick up. And there's a lot of sick people, I think, out there. I think there's right now, as it is there's a lot of dependent people out there, of people that are dependent on authority and dependent upon the state to give them the things that they need. But the state is stealing those resources from other people and divvying it out to the people that qualify. That doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to me.
It shouldn't make sense to anybody.
Yeah, to say that kind of thing is right for the government to be doing, that doesn't make sense to me. Okay. So we can all, in very little ways, very easily, really, we can all understand and look at other people and say, I'm going to treat them the way that I would like to be treated. And we've all felt it. William, I'm sure you've had something stolen from you, like a physical belonging, or maybe somebody's punched you in the face before for no reason. And I'm sure that a lot of your listeners have had similar things happen to them, and it doesn't feel great, and we can all, every single one of us as an individual, stand up and say, I'm not going to do that to other people. And when I see that kind of thing happening to other people, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to shout that that's wrong. And I'm going to come to that person who's the victim there. I'm going to come to their aid, and I'm going to help them defend themselves if they can't defend themselves on their own. We can all do that and contribute to a better future, because as it seems right now, my children's future is going to be a dark one. It doesn't look good for generations to come. And that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to take care of the young, so that way they have a good life, so that the tyranny doesn't increase. And unfortunately, there's been a few generations before mine, and even my own, that have not really contributed in a positive way to shape a future that's bright and full of opportunity.
Can you imagine what it would be like if we didn't have to pay these onerous taxes? Like, the tax itself is just so insane that people pay that much taxes. Imagine internalizing all that yourself. That would be what anarchism or leaderless things, like, you don't need these leaders. What if you didn't need these leaders? What if you didn't need all this money being spent on a bogus war? All that money saved or returned to the people, are kept by the people. The whole debt system wouldn't be there. I mean, it's incredible, like what we've learned to. We've basically been boiled like frogs, so we're already upside down, and we've just gotten used to like the tyranny. Like even in one, it's really only taken one generation before the inflation and the cost of living and the taxes have gotten to the point where it's outrageous. You're getting nothing in return from your government, just more BS. So it's unfortunate. Can you take a few questions?
Absolutely.
Mandatory microiditis asks, can you ask James if he's ever had to deal with cops trying to violate his rights?
Yeah. Yes, I have. And for the first time, I got arrested when I was like 16, and it was for the possession of cannabis. And I thought I could reason with the police officer, and I turned to him and I simply stated, "You don't have to do this." And I got the cliche, "Well, yes, we do. This is our job. We're just doing our job." You know, that was that was the first time I ever got arrested, and every other time following, it's been a violation of my rights because I was never doing anything objectively wrong toward anybody when I got arrested. And whenever I have interactions with the police, right away they're violating my rights. Their very existence is a violation of my rights because their paycheck is stolen money, my money, your money. And they don't, and like I stated earlier in my little rant, was that they swear an oath to enforce any law that is passed by politicians. It could be anything. So what I like to do, and I actually did this last week, I got pulled over for an inspection sticker not being up to date, and go through the motions. I try to act pleasant with them because they are human beings and they deserve compassion. I know it sounds very weird to hear me say the one thing following and then follow up with that, but they are human beings. They do deserve compassion. They are, for the most part, well-intentioned people who got taken advantage of and got tricked into being these people, and they wanted to protect their communities, and that's what I see largely police officers being. But now they have to do this for a paycheck, and that's exactly the answer I get most of the time when I ask one question to police is, if the government ever passed a law that was a clear violation of human rights, would you enforce it, or would you walk away and not do this job anymore? And most of the time when I ask that, I get a big, well, I guess it depends on the law, and I have a family to feed. These types of things is what I get as a response to that question, when it should just be a clear and simple, no, I wouldn't enforce that law. So yeah, I hope that answers that watcher's question.
Yeah, that's mandatory myocarditis. Dilligaff asked, what's going to replace voting? So you saying that even under anarchism or voluntarism, there's just really nothing. There's no authority at all. There's no overarching law courts or law enforcement or anything like that. Is that correct?
Not in the way of what we have now. I mean, there would be people out there that would be able to, communities have every right to figure it out. Like I live on a street, on this street. I don't live out in the woods by myself. I'd be a fool to think that I could just, live in a world without government and not have to, rely on my neighbors and be a decent person and ask them for help. And then when a big problem comes along, we have to team up and figure out how to do it, how to figure out the problem and fix it. I'd be a fool to assume that those kinds of things wouldn't exist. So what would replace voting? Nothing would replace voting. We could still vote. Yeah, voting is violence as it stands right now. What we're voting for is your neighbor's slavery. But I'm not talking about voting for politicians. I'm talking about we're going to vote to see who can come to our street and pave the road. What company is going to be able to do that? No, we're going to vote for that kind of thing instead of, oh, who's going to be the big daddy in government? Who's going to be the one to do this? If for government. That's what I mean there with what's on the screen with voting is violence. Stop voting for your own slavery. Okay. So that's it.
Yeah, that's an interesting world. I mean, the other thing is like some of these things are intermediaries between. They're supposed to be the sheriff or even at the kind of old school sheriff was an intermediary between you and the criminals or people who are violent. And so you basically are saying every individual has to have it upon themselves to defend their property and their rights and their bodily autonomy, right?
Mm-hmm. Because when more individuals this is part of the problem, William, is that our understanding of what is right and wrong has been completely obliterated by the same people who write these laws and everything, the school systems, all that stuff. They don't teach this anymore. They don't teach morality anymore. Everyone's got their own version of it, and that's fine. You can have your own experiences and your own opinions and all that stuff, but there is a right and wrong that exists for everyone. It's wrong for me to walk up to you and punch you in the face, no matter who I am or who you are. It doesn't matter. Like things like that. Like I can't go and break into my neighbor's house, and when they're like, "What are you doing here?" I can go, "Just doing whatever I want. I'll just do whatever I want to whoever I want, wherever I am, whenever." It doesn't matter. Like, no. So moral relativism is a big problem when it comes to people's understanding of what I'm talking about. Because if we all understood that our rights and wrongs are coming from some place that is greater than us, and that we all have the same rights and we can all commit the same wrongs, then mix that in with the idea that you don't want to go and do something to somebody that you wouldn't like it if it were done to you. Right? That's the golden rule. Don't do unto others as you would not have done unto you. And you live like that. It's very simple. It's so easy that it's like, it almost makes people so confused how easy it is. No, there must be a problem there. There must be something that can complicate this. No, it's really that simple. Don't do violence. Don't hurt people. Don't take their stuff. That's it. So when we get together and we live in a large community, and if everybody understands that, because they don't like it when it's done to them, why would they do it to somebody else? That's it. And why vote then? Why vote? Because no one's around hurting each other. And when the harm comes our way, we know what to do with it. We know what to do about it.
So even in this free state environment, in this kind of thing, you're still, is there any methods or means to garner group consensus on any issue? Like, should we build a bridge to go over the river or pave the road? Is it all just done? Wouldn't that just be chaos? Is everybody voluntarily making their own decision at any given time?
Well, if let's put it this way, if I exist in a group of 5 people, that group of 5 people exists in a city of 1,000 people or a town of 1,000 people. And this can happen on any sort of ratio. So 5 out of 1,000 think that there should be a bridge. We have not violated anybody's rights by going around talking about the bridge that we think should exist, seeing who wants to be a part of it, who can build it, all of this stuff, and go around and try to see who can get on our side. Okay, we've not violated anybody's rights at that point. We haven't stolen anything. We haven't done anything against anybody else's will. Nothing like that has taken place. Now, no one wants the bridge. Okay, the bridge doesn't get built. No one wants the road. Okay, the road doesn't get built. Try again next time. It's really like, we don't have to have these things. In a world where we were living voluntarily with one another, if this was going on back when it was first proposed, like over 100 years ago, when voluntarism was first proposed, imagine the world that we would live in now if that was the standard instead of the Federal Reserve and all the bullshit, all the stuff that's going on now wouldn't even exist. We would be living in a completely different world, completely different. Without the public education system existing the way that it does, big pharma existing the way that it does, all of the things that make the world a really spicy place to live, not existing, those things only happened because they were funded by money that was taken against people's will. Long after the ideas of anarchism and voluntarism were proposed as the solution to a lot of the larger problems that were being faced at the time in the early 20th century and the mid 19th century, even earlier than that. So those people were looked at as kooks. They were largely ignored, and they have been pushed to the back, in a big way instead we have corporations that are gaining all of this power, and the United States government is nothing but a big corporation. And if we don't see that by now, I don't know what else I don't know how to help a person that doesn't understand that. But I mean, we can live a very successful and happy life without having all of these things that people want, that they think that they need. I understand the infrastructure that exists today is something that a lot of people have gotten used to, and I don't seek to take that away from people with my ideology that I'm talking about here today. That's not my goal. I think those things can exist. I just don't think that they have to exist by the way of theft. I think that they can exist. People would want to have electricity, and the electricity went out. Don't we want that? Like, I think enough people could use their common sense to go, yeah, that's a good idea. I think we should have that. And I think that enough people, if they felt free enough to do it, they'd go, oh yeah, I'm going to give $5 to the road guy because I'd like to have a nice road. And then enough people do that. I mean, you don't need to force people to do most of the things that to provide for the things that we have today. You don't need to do that. If we really inspire people's critical thinking and common sense, we can get all the same niceties that we have right now, but we can subtract the coercion and force from the equation completely.
You can subtract the cost. I mean, the costs for this government and the state are off the charts.
Yeah.
I mean, on each person, it's basically you're carrying these corrupt criminals. They're literally criminals.
Mm-hmm.
And they're stealing from you and then taking that money and kind of transmogrifying it into their own benefit, whether that's inside trading or just outright theft or backhanded deals or stuff. So it's really incredible. And a perfect example of voluntarism is that these roads are so poorly done. We're building a country 7,000 miles away called Ukraine, which is possibly the stupidest adventure in human history, not just American history. It's obviously a foreign policy boondoggle, but it might be one of the stupidest things ever done in human history. But they have potholes. A guy went out and did the potholes himself, and locals were so grateful. They just gave him some money. They get $10 here, $20 here. Hey, fix this pothole. Better than the state. So the state is a joke, at least in the U.S. It didn't used to be such a joke, but we are at the 50-minute mark. James, where can people find you, find your more information, or ask you questions if they want to follow up?
Oh, the best place to do it would be voluntaristacademy.com. There's a contact page there. I just wanted to kind of put a ribbon on what you just said, and I'm glad that you brought it up because, yes, without the government getting involved and being the middleman, things get done faster. They're more efficient at doing things. The different tradesmen that we rely on to hang the wires and to pave the roads and to do the plumbing and all of the stuff that we have for infrastructure, those things are provided quicker, easier, faster, and cheaper. We live in a world that has the ability to be self-organizing, and we just need to not try to control people. But yeah, voluntaristacademy.com. There's a contact page there. You can reach out, tell me what you think. Compliments, criticisms, all that stuff are welcome. It's just the way of the world. And so then I'm on YouTube as well. I got a few videos posted there on the Voluntarist Academy channel. And anybody that comes over there, please enjoy the content. My goal is to really work toward uncovering the public education system for what it really is. And the way that I'm going to do that is just by I'm going to be creating basically audio books out of some of the things that I can't find audiobook versions of. So I'm like, all right, I'm just going to do it myself then, whatever, and try to share the information with the world as to, where my care really is to really expose the public education system for what it really is. It's an indoctrination camp. It's a slave factory. That's what it is. And it's they by way of mind control. is what they do. So with a couple generations down the road, if we can really kind of reform or get the kids out of the public education system, reform it into something else, convince the good teachers to be private and to be entrepreneurs and to like break free from the system, we can take the power back relatively quickly, and we can create a couple generations down the road. We can have real liberty again. There was a time in this country where it did exist, and we can get back to that, and it can work for everybody. But it's going to take a little bit of hard work, a little bit of sacrifice, and a lot of responsibility in order to make sure that we can get back to that place while maintaining all of the nice things that we have today that are, somewhat unnecessary.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. And it's James Cordiner of the Voluntaryist Academy, and I'll put a link to his website in the show notes. Thanks so much for your time, James.
Thank you, William.